Brock Lesnar just crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. What you're about to witness is the most brutal backstage assault in WWE history, and I guarantee you've never seen the Beast this unhinged before. Bronson Reed thought he could mess with a former UFC heavyweight champion? He just learned the hardest lesson of his entire career, and frankly, I'm questioning if WWE officials should have even allowed this to happen. This wasn't just a beatdown, this was a statement of dominance that has the entire wrestling world asking one terrifying question: has Brock Lesnar finally snapped? And more importantly, should Bronson Reed even be cleared to compete after what the Beast just did to him? Because what I'm about to show you is going to make your jaw drop to the floor. You think you know Brock Lesnar? You think you've seen him at his most vicious? Think again. This backstage massacre proves that the Beast Incarnate operates on a completely different level of intensity than any other superstar in WWE, and Bronson Reed just became his latest victim in the most devastating way possible. But here's what's really going to blow your mind: this entire situation started over something so small that when you hear the full story, you're going to be furious at how it escalated to this point. The WWE Universe is already divided on social media about whether this was justified or if Lesnar went too far, and after you see this footage, you're going to have some strong opinions too. Let me paint you the picture of what led to this explosive confrontation. Bronson Reed had been running his mouth for weeks about how the part-time superstars like Brock Lesnar don't deserve their spots, claiming that full-time wrestlers like himself work harder and deserve more respect. The Aussie powerhouse even had the audacity to call out Lesnar on social media, saying he was soft compared to the new generation of wrestlers. Now, anyone who knows anything about Brock Lesnar knows that questioning his legitimacy is like poking a sleeping grizzly bear with a stick. This is the same man who conquered The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak, the same Beast who dominated both WWE and UFC, and Reed thought he could just disrespect him without consequences? The sheer arrogance was off the charts. But here's where it gets really interesting: WWE management apparently tried to keep these two separated because they knew this was a powder keg waiting to explode. According to multiple backstage sources, there were strict instructions that Lesnar and Reed should have different arrival times, different locker room areas, even different catering schedules. But sometimes, fate has other plans, and when these two titans crossed paths backstage, all hell broke loose. The footage I'm about to describe shows Bronson Reed walking through the backstage area, probably feeling confident after his recent dominant performances. The 330-pound Australian has been on an absolute tear lately, destroying opponents left and right with a devastating tsunami splash. He was carrying himself with that swagger that only comes from being on a winning streak, completely unaware that his worst nightmare was about to become reality. Then, like something out of a horror movie, Brock Lesnar appears in the frame. And let me tell you, the look in the Beast's eyes was absolutely terrifying. This wasn't the cocky, smiling Brock we sometimes see, this was the primal, UFC Brock who used to make grown men tremble in the octagon. The intensity radiating from him was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Reed, to his credit, didn't back down initially. He actually stepped up to Lesnar, getting right in his face and apparently saying something that we can't hear clearly in the footage. But whatever came out of his mouth was the wrong thing to say, because what happened next was pure, unbridled violence that left everyone in the vicinity scrambling for safety. Lesnar exploded into action with the speed and ferocity of a caged animal being released. The first thing he did was grab Reed by the throat with both hands and slam him against the concrete wall with such force that you can actually hear the impact echoing through the hallway. The sound was so brutal that several backstage workers immediately started running toward the scene. But the Beast wasn't even getting started. He grabbed Reed by his gear and launched him across the hallway like he weighed nothing. Remember, Bronson Reed is 330 pounds of solid muscle, and Lesnar just tossed him around like a rag doll. The Australian crashed into a pile of equipment cases, sending tools and cables flying everywhere in complete chaos. Reed tried to fight back, throwing some heavy shots that would have dropped most men, but Lesnar just absorbed them like they were love taps. The look on Reed's face when he realized his punches weren't even phasing the Beast was priceless. You could see the exact moment when confidence turned to pure terror. That's when Lesnar really started to show his MMA background. He shot in for a double-leg takedown that would have made his old UFC coaches proud, driving Reed hard into the concrete floor with an impact that made everyone watching wince. The technical precision mixed with raw brutality was something to behold. This wasn't just a brawl, this was a demolition. What happened next still gives me chills thinking about it. Lesnar mounted Reed and started raining down ground and pound strikes that looked more like something from the UFC octagon than a WWE backstage area. These weren't worked punches for the cameras, these were real strikes from a legitimate fighter who was seeing red. The security team that rushed to break it up couldn't even get close initially because Lesnar was in such a zone of destruction. It took 8 security guards plus several WWE officials to finally separate them, and even then, Lesnar was still trying to get at Reed while being held back by multiple people. The Beast was absolutely wild with rage. But here's the part that's going to make you furious. Apparently, this whole situation could have been prevented if WWE management had handled Reed's social media comments differently. Instead of letting him continue to disrespect Lesnar publicly, they should have shut it down immediately. But no, they thought it would make for good television drama, and now look what happened. The aftermath was even more shocking than the attack itself. Bronson Reed had to be helped to his feet and was clearly dazed from the beating he'd just received. The medical team immediately rushed to check on him, and from what we could see, he was definitely feeling the effects of Lesnar's devastating assault. Meanwhile, Brock Lesnar was being escorted away by security, but the most chilling part was that he looked completely calm afterward, like he had just finished a light workout instead of absolutely destroying another human being. That cold, calculated demeanor is what makes the Beast so terrifying. He can go from zero to nuclear in seconds and then back to normal like nothing happened. The WWE Universe's reaction on social media has been explosive. Some fans are calling it the most brutal backstage attack they've ever seen, while others are criticizing WWE for allowing the situation to escalate to this point. The hashtag Brock vs Reed has been trending worldwide, with fans demanding answers about what's going to happen next. But here's what really has everyone talking. Multiple sources are reporting that this wasn't a scripted segment. This was a real altercation that happened because of legitimate heat between these two superstars. If that's true, then what we witnessed was actual violence, not sports entertainment, and that changes everything. The implications for both men's careers are massive. Lesnar could face serious disciplinary action from WWE management, possibly even suspension or termination if they determine he went too far. But on the flip side, his stock has never been higher with fans who want to see that kind of legitimate intensity in professional wrestling. As for Bronson Reed, this attack could either destroy his confidence or fuel him with the motivation for the greatest revenge story in WWE history. The question is whether he'll even be physically able to compete after taking that kind of punishment from a legitimate fighter like Lesnar. What makes this situation even more controversial is the timing. With WWE's current focus on creating must-see television and breaking through the noise of social media, some cynics are wondering if this was all an elaborate work designed to create viral moments. But the genuine shock and concern from the backstage personnel suggests this was very real. The medical evaluation of Bronson Reed revealed some concerning details that WWE is trying to keep under wraps. Sources close to the situation report that Reed was experiencing dizziness and disorientation for several hours after the attack, raising serious questions about potential head trauma from being slammed against the concrete wall. This brings up a huge ethical question: should WWE allow situations to develop where real violence becomes possible? The company has worked hard to move away from the Attitude Era's backstage politics and legitimate fights, but incidents like this prove that when you put alpha male competitors together, explosions can happen. The legal ramifications could be enormous too. If this was indeed a real assault, Reed could potentially press charges against Lesnar, leading to criminal prosecution. Imagine the headlines if a former UFC champion gets arrested for beating up a WWE superstar. The mainstream media attention would be insane. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Both men are under WWE contract, and the company has specific clauses about conduct and altercations between performers. Depending on how they classify this incident, both Lesnar and Reed could face significant fines, suspensions, or even contract termination. The backstage morale has reportedly been shaken by this incident. Other superstars are said to be walking on eggshells around Lesnar, afraid that they might accidentally say or do something that triggers another explosive outburst. The locker room atmosphere has completely changed overnight. What's really got everyone's attention is how this compares to other famous backstage fights in wrestling history. This makes the Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels Montreal incident look like a gentle disagreement. The sheer physicality and one-sidedness of Lesnar's assault puts it in a category all by itself. The footage that's circulating shows just how helpless Reed was once Lesnar started his assault. Despite his impressive size and strength, he looked like an amateur fighter who wandered into the octagon with a seasoned professional. The skill gap was absolutely terrifying to witness. Industry veterans are calling this a watershed moment that could change how WWE handles backstage tensions moving forward. The old days of letting superstars settle things themselves might be officially over after seeing what can happen when a legitimate fighter like Lesnar loses control. The fan reaction has been unprecedented in its intensity. Wrestling Twitter is absolutely exploding with debates about whether this was justified, whether it was real, and what it means for the future of both superstars. The engagement numbers are through the roof, proving that controversy still sells in the wrestling business. What's really shocking is how quickly this escalated from verbal jabs to physical violence. It shows that despite all the corporate polish and mainstream acceptance, professional wrestling still has the dangerous edge that can surface at any moment. When real fighters with real egos clash, the results can be devastating. The medical staff's immediate response suggests they were genuinely concerned about Reed's condition, which adds credibility to the theory that this wasn't a work. You don't see that level of urgency and concern for a scripted segment. This incident has reignited discussions about whether part-time superstars like Lesnar should be held to different standards than full-time performers. Some argue that his special status gives him too much power, while others say his legitimate fighting credentials mean he should be treated with extra respect. The ripple effects are already being felt throughout the wrestling world. Other promotions are watching closely to see how WWE handles this situation, as it could set precedents for how similar incidents are managed across the industry. What makes this even more captivating is that both men have legitimate claims to being among the most dangerous performers on the WWE roster. Reed's devastating tsunami splash and Lesnar's MMA background made this a collision of two titans who both have the ability to legitimately hurt people. The security footage reveals details that make this even more intense. You can see other superstars and backstage workers immediately clearing the area once they realized what was happening. Nobody wanted to get caught in the crossfire when the Beast was in destroy mode. This explosive encounter has set up what could be the most personal and violent feud in recent WWE history. Whether this leads to a sanctioned match or further backstage chaos, one thing is certain: the wrestling world will never be the same after witnessing Brock Lesnar's most devastating backstage assault ever. The question now is, what happens next? Will WWE punish Lesnar or capitalize on the massive buzz this has created? Will Bronson Reed seek revenge, or will he be too intimidated to ever cross the Beast again? One thing's for sure, you won't want to miss what happens next in this absolutely insane story.